All right, so what I would like to show here is how we start thinking about modeling some of the objects that are part of our game, whether it's a mini golf course or a tabletop game. So yesterday I started showing the process of modeling out the base and the walls, kind of like the basic stuff that you're going to have as part of your object. And now what I want to do is start looking at some techniques for how you can break down some of the other parts of your game and start modeling those things in Onshape. So this is the image that I'm using as my reference here. This is my overall top view, and then these are all the individual object views. I think for today what I want to do is focus on this pirate ship as the thing that I might want to model. And one of the first questions I need to kind of ask myself is, am I going to make a fully 3D model of this thing, or am I just going to make this as basically a flat 2D cutout? And both of them have different pros and cons. The biggest downside, I would say, to modeling the entire thing as a 3D object is just the amount of time and complexity. You could spend the next couple of weeks modeling this 3D pirate ship to get all the details you want and everything, and completely run yourself out of time to do the rest of the project. So what I'm going to show right now today is I've made the decision that I'm just going to make this pirate ship. It's basically a 2D cutout, so think about it as the outline of, this would technically be the side view of this pirate ship as it's shown right here. Now, the reason this drawing is nice is, like I mentioned the other day, whoever did this probably used some kind of image as a reference when they were making their final drawing, and so they got some nice detail there. But we're also going to use an image as a reference when we go to model this in Onshape. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to move this over to the side, and what I want to do is start off by showing you some techniques specifically for finding images that are going to help you out as you work on this stuff in Onshape. So I'm just going to Google Images. I'm going to search for pirate ship. And what you're going to notice as I get that first screen of results is that I get a pretty mixed group of different images. I get some like photorealistic renderings from movies. I get photos, whether it's of a real thing or a toy. I get some different kinds of images here, like this is a print, like an illustration. I get a whole bunch of different things. And some of these are going to be more useful than others as I go to try to model this in Onshape, right? So this three-quarter view, like this sort of perspective view of this pirate ship, is cool, but it's not going to necessarily help me that much as I go to model. So one of the tools I want to show you is directly in Google Images. And if you've never used it before, it's this Tools button right up here. So take a look with me. This Tools button in Google Images actually allows you to specify a number of things. And what I find most useful when I'm doing this kind of stuff is to either look for clip art or line drawings. So if you've never done this before, this is super useful. It's just going to refine the image results that you get. So as soon as I choose clip art, all of a sudden I start getting much more simplified drawings. And this is actually going to be way more useful to model from an Onshape. The other one that will sometimes give you really good results is line drawing. We get a much more detailed drawings right here. And again, we get some that are just this side view, some that are more of a perspective view. I actually think that in this case, the clip art was giving me better results because I want to do a pretty simple pirate ship. I think this one looks pretty cool. I like the sails and all that good stuff. Let's go ahead and try and use that one. So I've clicked on this in Google Images. I'm going to click on this image again, and it will take me to the place where this was originally from. Now this is a stock image. And if I try to right-click on this thing and say Save Image As, what you're going to notice is that it tries to save it as, in this case, it's trying to save it as a JPEG, so that's cool. Sometimes what you will see, though, is it's going to try and save it as like a web page complete, which basically means it's not actually an image file. You won't be able to use that in Onshape. So one additional thing you could do is you could also just take a screenshot. So I'm on a Mac, but you could do this on a Chromebook as well. I'm just going to go ahead and take a screenshot of this. Now this is a stock photo, and it is credited to this person and from this website. We are not going to use this actual photo in our design. We're just using it as a reference to sketch from. So it is okay to use for this purpose. We're not actually reproducing this image. We're not using their copyrighted work. We're just using it as a reference to basically model from. So this is all right. So I'm good there now. I can close these tabs, and let's come back into Onshape. So if I look back at my reference image, that pirate ship is shown about 2/3 of the way back in my in my golf course as far as the base is concerned. And you could choose to model this in its own separate part studio. But what I find is I think it's very convenient most of the time to model everything in one part studio, so you get an early view of how it's going to come together even before you go into your assembly and start adding those parts together. So I'm going to model this directly in here. I know that I want it to go sort of side to side, about 2/3 of the way back. So I'm actually going to start with just adding a new plane. I'm going to do an offset plane from the front, and you notice that these planes are really small, the default ones that it starts with, because I made such a large thing for the base. For right now, I'm just going to do this visually. I'm going to pull this plane back about 2/3 of the way. I could type in a measurement here if I wanted, but that seems fine like it is. I'll click the green check, and now I'm going to start a sketch on this new plane. I'll just choose it from the features list right here, and I'll click on the plane that I want, so that's cool. And now I'm going to go to my front view. I'd like to go ahead and insert my image here so I can start sketching on it. And so to do that, I need to find it. I can either search for the tool, there's insert image right there, or I can look in my drop-down menu. So I want to insert an image. You notice I've got a couple examples from earlier demos right there. I'm going to click import, and I'm going to go find this thing. That's it right there. That's cool. And I can close my notifications window once it's uploaded. And now what it says is to select an image and to draw an image rectangle. So I selected it, and now I'm just going to draw a rectangle that drops in here. I don't think that's the right one, actually. Let me redo that. Let me insert a new image, because I think I selected the wrong one. This is the one that we wanted. There we go. All right, so I've drawn my image out. I don't know how big this thing is right now, but I can go in and use my dimension tool. And if I look back at my reference image, it said that the pirate should be 10 inches wide. So I'm going to make my ship 10 inches wide here as well. Right now it's like 23. I might give it a little extra room because there's a little extra room in this image. I think I might make the overall image box 11 so that the pirate ship itself is 10 inches. And one thing that's kind of nice here is I can actually take this and drag it around. Unlike some other things in a sketch sometimes, I can just drag this around to where I want it. And this doesn't do me any good yet as far as actually being able to turn this into a 3D object. But what it does allow me to do is have a reference to sketch on top of. So that kind of leads me to the next technique I want to show you, which is using splines. So you've used splines before for different projects. What I want to do today, though, is show and talk about a couple of techniques for using them effectively. So here's what I mean. Anytime we've got an image that's got lots of curves like this, a spline is a really good choice to use. It's not the only way to do it, but it's a good choice. And let's say for this first example that all I want to do is make the overall hull, just sort of the body of the ship. Maybe I'll make the masts and the sails separately. Maybe I'll go ahead and add those on later. I'm just going to make just this part for right now, though. So I've got my spline tool. I'm going to start, let's say, here and start working my way around. So the first thing I want to encourage you to do is to not get too caught up in trying to make your first set of lines perfect. You'll drive yourself a little bit crazy trying to do that. I'm just trying to roughly outline this. And I don't care that this little stock photo thing is in there. It's not going to affect me. I'm just going to go through and start making my spline. And I'm just basically sketching it out roughly. And that looks probably pretty good. The next thing I want to show you about spline is, this is the thing that confuses people a lot, is how do you finish your spline? They're like, I've drawn everything I want, the spline tool won't go away, or I clicked escape because I was done drawing and my whole spline disappeared, right? To finish a spline, you need to just double click. And you can either do that outside, or you can come back to the beginning of that spline and double click, and it will turn it into a closed shape, which is what we want. So I found the origin where I started sketching from. I'm going to double click, and you notice that it turns light gray and it turns it into a closed shape. I'm still in my spline tool, but I can either deselect it up here or just hit escape and be done with it. Okay. So you notice this is still a pretty rough outline. But what I want to do now is go in there and start refining this. And so to do that, I can grab these pieces right here. So these are called control points on a spline, and they basically allow me to adjust the curvature of this spline to whatever I want it. Now here's the thing. It doesn't really matter how good I am at moving this one control point here. It's going to have a really hard time making this curve perfect. So the other thing I want to show you about splines is that if you don't have a control point where you need one, you can actually go in and add those, separate from drawing the spline itself. So if I come up here, I can not only choose spline, but I can say spline control point. I can click on this wherever I want it, and then that gives me a new control point. Let me get out of the control point tool. That's going to allow me to refine this spline a lot more carefully than before. So I can come in here and really dial this in to be exactly the shape that I want, and I can basically go through and keep doing that all the way around. Now, the thing I will caution you is adding more control points is not always better. Try to add as few control points as you need, because it will start getting a lot more complex the more control points you add, right? So add them where you need them to control the lines, but don't go crazy just adding control points all over the place. It will actually make it a little harder when you go to actually try and refine that. For this, I probably need a control point here to make that a sharper curve, so I could go in and add one there. I'm not going to do that for purposes of what we're doing right now. This is fine. I'm actually going to go ahead and click the green check. And what you're going to notice here, if I zoom back a little bit, is I still have the background image of the pirate ship there. But if I come up to my extrude tool, I can now select that closed body. Maybe I want to cut this on the laser cutter eventually, so I'll make this like 0.15 inches thick. And I'll click the green check. Onshape tries to be helpful, and so once I've extruded that, it turns off the visibility of that sketch, and I've just got just this piece sitting right here, and it's ready to go. It's not attached to the base in any way, so I still have to figure out how I'm going to attach it to the base, if it's going to be a moving part or so on. But at least I have the basic shape extruded as a flat 3D object. Okay, so those are the techniques I wanted to show today. Finding images that are going to be helpful in Google Images, refining that using the clip art or line drawings, importing those images for reference, and then using splines and control points to actually make those things.